أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد Alhamdulillah. Respected brothers and sisters, welcome to another lesson of our Hadith class of Riyadus Saliheen from here in Darul Masjid in Shadwell. Alhamdulillah. Today we continue from where we left off last week, and the chapter that we left off at last week was the chapter of the virtues of the first saf in Salah, virtues of the first line, the first row in Salah. Of course, previously we studied the virtues of the Jama'ah itself and learned that the Salah of Jama'ah is 27 times more rewarding and more valuable, more beneficial in the sight of Allah than praying Salah alone individually. So always we should try to go to the masjid in Jama'ah, and even if we do not go to the masjid, then at least we should try to pray in Jama'ah wherever we are. Today's chapter is 194. The chapter of the virtues of the first saf. And the hadith number, first one is 1082. Hadith number 1082. And it says, عن جابر بن سمرة رضي الله عنه عنهما قال خرج علينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال. This hadith is being narrated by a Sahabi called Jabir ibn Samurah. He was from the Ansar, he was from the Medinans. He was from those who helped the Prophet ﷺ and his Muhajirin when they arrived to Mecca. He says that I heard the Prophet he says that one day the Prophet ﷺ came out to lead us in Salah, and he said to us, ألا تصفون كما تصف الملائكة عند ربها. Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ said to the Sahaba, will you not line up and make your rows how the angels make their rows and make their lines in front of their Creator? Will you not make your rows like how the angels make, because you're standing in front of Allah to obey Him, to worship Him? Will you then not make your lines how the angels also make their lines when they go to pray or when they go to stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal? فَقُلْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. So we said, the Sahaba said, O Prophet of Allah, O Messenger of Allah, وَكَيْفَ تَصُفُّ الْمَلَائِكَةُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهَا. How do the angels make their rows in front of Allah? قَالَ يتمون الصفوف الأول ويتراصون في الصف. That the method of the angels when they make their rows in front of Allah is that they make rows complete, the first one first, and then they make each and every single one of the rows absolutely and completely straight. So the Salah system that we see, the system of the Salah of making the rows straight and making sure there are no gaps and making sure that the first saf is complete and then the second, is in fact an angelic form. It's an angelic appearance, an angelic organization. I think it was once I heard this story. Someone said that an event manager or an engineer of some sort was asked the question, how long would it take to make a bunch of people stand in a straight row if they were in the thousands? And the event manager said, to make them stand in a straight row, you take a lot of time. And he said, what do you think if they were in the millions? How long do you think it will take for millions of people to stand in straight rows? He said, well, this is a massive project. And then the answer was that, well, Muslims do that every single day 5 times in Mecca. Especially in the Hajj days when there are millions of visitors. Within seconds, by the time Iqamah is complete, every single row is straight. It's amazing, right? It's because we've been trained by the Prophet ﷺ, trained by Allah to stand like angels in Salah. And it is absolutely important that we maintain the straightness of the saf. There should be no one forward, someone back. We've even got lines now. Before they never had lines. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was no lines. So these lines are there to help us. Even then we find some people are a bit forward, some people are a bit back, some people are a bit lazy, some people are leaving a massive gap. You're not allowed to leave any gaps whatsoever in your saf at all. Of course, Corona times we made exception because of social distancing. But apart from that, when there is an imminent threat, like a medical necessity, we have to make our rows very straight. And it's unfortunate that a lot of the times you find gaps in the sufuf, especially towards the back. So we have to bear this in mind. Rawahu Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ is encouraging us to stand in salah like the angels stand in front of Allah by completing the first saf first. So if you see a small gap in the row in front of you, fill that up first. It's not just because the Imam is saying it so that he can facilitate for logistical reasons for the musallis that can't be late. This is the original method of salah. Even if there is a massive mosque and there's only a few of you, you still have to complete the first saf first. You don't have the freedom of standing wherever you want. Because this is how the Prophet ﷺ taught the Sahaba. Hadith number 1083. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لو يعلم الناس ما في النداء والصف الأول ثم لم يجدوا إلا أن يستهموا عليه لاستهموا. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu arda is saying that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, say with me, sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, if people knew the value and the virtue of the adhan and the iqamah, the nida, the call to prayer, and if they knew the value and the virtue of the first saf and the first row, and then if they found themselves that everyone wants to now give the adhan, everyone wants to call the iqamah, everyone wants to be there at the adhan and the iqamah, everyone wants to come to the first saf, there's not enough space. If that became the case, then if they had to draw lots, like a raffle, a halal one with no betting, if they had to do that, then if they really knew and understood and appreciated the value of the first row, they would have even done that. That's how valuable the first row is in the sight of Allah. And so we should try to make that, for us, for young men and young brothers, it's a bit of a, we're still behind in this regard. It's still the uncles that win. It's still the elders that beat us. They're still stronger. They're still earlier. They're still more consistent. They come and fill up the first sufuf. You'll find the youngsters, mashallah, which is good, but you'll find them at the back somewhere and so on. And sometimes they come in the back and they try to go over who's next to go to the front. This is not also allowed. That's another problem. Next hadith, 1084. He says, وعنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خير صفوف الرجال أولها وشرها آخرها وخير صفوف النساء آخرها وشرها أولها أو أولها. He's saying that the Prophet ﷺ said that the best of the rows for men is the first of them, and the worst of rows for men is the last of them. And Ramadan is coming soon. You will find young brothers fighting for the last saf, so they can lean back and jump into the salah when the imam goes to ruku'. That's for the good ones. And some of them are completely, obviously, some of us are completely missing. And some brothers, mashallah, I've got to praise them as well. You have to give them credit where it's due. They are always at the first saf. Young brothers, they will come and wait half an hour in advance. Some of them will have the iftar in the masjid, especially in the first 10 when it's very busy, just to be in the first. May Allah bless them and reward them. And they will be rewarded, no doubt whatsoever. And then he says, the best of the rows for women is the opposite, is the last of them. And the best of them. And the worst of them is the first. Why is that? There is a reason for why I'm saying that. This is where the masjid hall is in one hall. Men and women are in the same hall. So the hadith is encouraging us that women should try to keep a big gap. They should try to cover themselves more in the masjid, especially where there is no covering, when there is no separate hall. Where there is a separate hall, there's no problem. They should also compete to go towards the front. So for example, if now we have a ladies' hall over there which is separate, there is no men there whatsoever, does that mean that women should start lining up from the back? No. It means they should start lining up from the forward. Otherwise you'll have, the later ones will have to walk in front of the women that are praying at the back. It would be, that's not what the hadith is saying. What the hadith is saying is that where the masjid is together and it is possible for men and women to see each other. Because in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, that's how it was. There was no separate hall. They were in the same hall. The women were at the back. So he's encouraging that women stay back as much as possible so that there's more hijab, there's more covering, there's no possibility of communication and seeing and so on and so forth. This is, again, it's a precautionary measure. It's from the adab of the masjid. Someone shouldn't assume that, well, does that mean otherwise? All of these other negative thoughts people have. Don't think negatively. See the hadith as it is supposed to be. The intention behind the hadith is positive. It is to preserve us and to allow us to attain maximum reward for when you come to the masjid. And then, of course, in recent years, we've had this very crazy phenomenon all over social media. Some young men and women were going to the masjid to check out what they're not supposed to check out. And last year, in fact, one of our neighboring masjid, the big masjid, they had to make a public announcement for this because it became a phenomenon, an issue. Because this is exactly what Hadith is saying. Don't do that. Don't go to the masjid to be looking. Go to the masjid to be worshipping Allah. Okay, so remember this, because as Ramadan approaches very fast, which is just a few weeks now, we need to bear that in mind so that we can attain maximum reward for coming to the masjid rather than sins. 1085 وعن أبي سعيد الخدري أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رأى في أصحابه تأخرا فقال لهم تقدموا فأتموا بي وليأتم بكم من بعدكم لا يزال قوم يتأخرون حتى يؤخرهم الله. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, again we've spoken about him before, he's from the youngsters of the Sahaba, one of the largest narrators of a Hadith. He says that the Prophet ﷺ saw in his companions some sort of a delay on a particular moment in time. They were somewhat being a bit slow in coming to the first saf and coming to the masjid. So he said to them, come forward and follow me, come close to me, because you're following me, come as close as possible to me. And those who are behind you, let them follow you. Let them also come and stand right behind you. They shouldn't be joining from 3 meters away or 4 meters away, being lazy and so on. You know, sometimes you go to certain places that you find that the saf is there and the next person is standing like 50 meters away. That's not how it should be. This jama'ah has to be connected. There shouldn't be a gap of more than 3 sufuf or 3 yards in between each saf. You should be able to see the person in front of you and follow them in front of you in order for you to be able to be part of the jama'ah. There is a lot of masail around that. And so the Prophet ﷺ is saying clearly in this hadith that follow me so you can see me, and those who are behind you, let them also see you and follow you. And then he says that if you keep on being late and delaying and coming back in salah, or going and being reluctant to come forward in salah and always remaining behind for salah, then Allah will make you fall behind. So this is a very, very great warning to be careful about. 1086 وعن أبي مسعود رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح مناكبنا في الصلاة ويقول استووا ولا تختلفوا فتختلف قلوبكم ليليني منكم أولو الأحلام والنهى ثم الذين يلونهم. Abi Mas'ud is narrating رضي الله عنه وارضاه, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to touch our shoulders. He used to physically for a period of time, not all the time, for a period of time, in order to teach them how to straighten their rows. He was literally going straighten their sufuf by touching their shoulders, and he would say to them, istawu, make it straight. He would physically go, so the Imam has a right to do that. If the Imam sees that people are not filling up the gaps and not standing row, he has a right to go into the sufuf and check that it's done. So maybe we should do that one day. Okay, and then he would say to them, straighten your rows and do not differ. Don't leave gaps. Don't be different. Because if you are like that, Allah is saying, the Prophet is saying, فَتَخْتَلِفَ قُلُوبُكُمْ, that your hearts will become different. So another benefit we learn from standing straight in rows and neatly and together is that it is a form of establishing unity and love and companionship and brotherhood between Muslims. And in fact, for those who come into Islam, a lot of the times they say one of the most striking things about Islam is that when you go to the masjid, everyone is the same. The rich, the poor, the king and the servant, and everybody. Can the king say, okay, no. For me today, I want a special spot for me in the... No, you have to come and join the jama'ah exactly like your normal person. It's the same rules for everybody because we're all servants of Allah. And so therefore, if we leave gaps, if you start leaving gaps, and if you normalize leaving gaps, if you normalize having some people forward and some people back, what's going to happen? Eventually, those of prestige and those of, money and etc., they will start differing in society, and this salah will become a form of, instead of becoming a form of unity and unification, it will become a form of, differentiation and prejudice and so on and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that don't leave gaps because your hearts will become distant thereby. And then he said, those who stand behind me, the closest to me, are those who are of understanding and of age of puberty. That's why the sufuf immediately behind the Imam, there should be an order. The children should be further back. They should be further back. Children are welcome. See, there's a balance. We don't say children are welcome and now there are no rules. There are rules. Your children are welcome. They can come play in the masjid. Everything, they're welcome. they should learn the adab of the masjid, but they should come and maintain the rules of the masjid. Of that is that right behind the imam, they shouldn't be standing there. They should be the mature, knowledgeable people there. Why? Because if the imam makes a mistake, who's going to correct him? The child. If the imam, for some reason, has to use the bathroom, someone has to come forward and lead the salah. The child. No, it doesn't work like that. So the masjid, the saf should be behind the imam, should be the most, the knowledgeable, those who are baligh and knowledgeable and understanding. If someone is baligh and knowledgeable and understanding, and is sitting there, you can't move that person. You can't say, oh, can you move out of the way because someone else has to someone's side. They came first, so they have a priority. The only condition is they have to be baligh and they have to be a person of understanding and knowledge. You can't have sorry, I am a celebrity guy, so I have to come and take your space. Unless he willingly, voluntarily says, khalas, come and welcome, that's something else. But the priority is first come, first serve, if you fulfill the condition. ثم الذين يلونهم وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سووا صفوفكم فإن تسوية الصف من تمام الصلاة متفق عليه. Anas ibn Malik says that the Prophet ﷺ used to say, make your rows straight, because making rows straight is from the perfection of the salah. Making the rows straight, you don't think that making the rows straight is just something to look good. It's actually a part of the salah itself, because he said this is how the malaika also stand in front of Allah. And the Prophet encouraged it and physically established it. And so therefore it is emphasized sunnah which cannot be missed without a valid excuse. In another narration he says, فَإِنَّ تَسْوِيَةَ الصُّفُوفِ مِنْ إِقَامَةِ الصَّلَاةِ. Straightening and perfecting the rows is a part of establishing salah. One is perfecting salah and establishing salah. It's a part of both of them. وعنه قال أقيمت الصلاة فأقبل علينا رسول الله بوجهه فقال أقيموا صفوفكم وتراصوا فإني أراكم من وراء ظهري. رواه البخاري بلفظه ومسلم معنى أفيره. وفي رواية البخاري وكان أحدنا يلزق منكبه بمنكب صاحبه وقدمه بقدمه. This is a very, very interesting narration. وعنه قال, the same Sahabi, i.e. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, is saying that the salah was called for, as in the iqamah was done. So the Prophet ﷺ came to us with his face, he turned around to check. And he said, أَقِيمُوا صُفُوفَكُمْ وَتَرَاصُوا. Make your rows straight and neat and come together, do not leave any gaps. So the imam should turn around and check. That's what we do sometimes as well. فَإِنِّي أَرَاكُمْ مِنْ ظَهْرِي مِنْ وَرَاءِ ظَهْرِي. And then he said, because I can see you from behind my back. This was one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ. He was given the ability to see what's behind him. This was a special miracle given to the Prophet ﷺ. He was able to see what was by the permission of Allah was behind him. And then in another narration in Bukhari and also Muslim, he says, in another narration of Bukhari, he says that the Sahabi is saying that we used to attach our shoulder to the shoulder of the person next to me and our feet to the feet of the person next to me. This is where shoulder to shoulder, feet to feet comes from. And so for those scholars who've said that this is a very important thing to have shoulder to shoulder and feet to feet, we respect that. But notice that the whole idea behind it is to make your row straight. Make your row straight. And in fact, this we can see is from the amal of the Sahabi. It's from the action of the Sahabi. As for the encouragement of the Prophet ﷺ, he is encouraging straightening and perfecting and iqamat as-salah and tamam as-salah and so on and so forth. So that's why connecting your feet is not in the madhab of every single faqih. Is not. Rather, what's agreed upon is that all of us should be attached on our shoulders and that there should be no gaps and the rows should be straight. And we should appreciate that difference. وعن النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا تسون صفوفكم أو ليخالفن الله بين وجوهكم. متفق عليه. وفي رواية لمسلم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يسوي صفوفنا حتى كأنما يسوي بها القداح حتى رأى أنا قد عقلنا عنه ثم خرج يوما فقام حتى كاد يكبر فرأى رجلا باديا صدره من الصف فقال عباد الله لتسون صفوفكم أو ليخالفن الله بين وجوهكم. And Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu arda, again from the Ansar of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Medinans, he says that I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say that you must complete and perfect your sufuf, or Allah will indeed and surely He will make difference between your faces. He will make difference between you. Saying that unity, you have to establish your sufuf, make them straight, make them rows and neat and tidy and no gaps. Otherwise, it shall indeed be a reason of difference and disunity in the hearts of believers. Muttafaqun alayh. It's agreed upon hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. And then he says, in another narration, the Prophet ﷺ used to straighten our rows physically. He used to straighten it as if he was straightening an arrow. And he has to be very straight arrow, otherwise it will not fly properly. And then until he realized, until he noticed and he was confident that we understood. So it's not every time, you don't have to say Atimu sufuf wa aqimu sufuf. If the jama'ah have mashallah learned the message, then it's not necessarily that you have to say every single salah. So perfection of the sufuf is from the salah, but making the i'lan and notice of perfection of the sufuf is not necessarily from the part of the salah. It is done when and where required, and as much as required depending on the jama'ah and the masjid and the people and the congregation. He said, until we understood that from the Prophet ﷺ. Then one day when he came to lead us in salah, and then he was about to say Allahu Akbar, and then suddenly he saw a person, his chest was sticking out in the line. So he then reminded them once again that you should indeed definitely straighten your rows, or Allah Azza wa Jal will make differences between your faces. Allah will make differences between you. Allah will disunite you. وعن البراء بن عازب رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يتخلل الصف من ناحية إلى ناحية يمسح صدورنا ومناكبنا ويقول لا تختلفوا فتختلف قلوبكم وكان يقول إن الله وملائكته يصلون على الصفوف الأول. This hadith is being narrated by Al-Bara ibn Azib radiyallahu anhu arda. What's the fly doing here? He said that the Prophet ﷺ used to go between our rows from one side to the other side, and he used to literally touch our chests and our shoulders to make sure we're straight in rows. And then he used to say that don't be different in your saf because your hearts will become different. And then he also added that indeed Allah and His Messenger, Allah and His angels send peace upon the first rows. So that's another benefit of coming to the first row, that you receive the peace and the blessings and the dua of the malaika, as well as the peace and the blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal. وعن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أقيموا الصفوف وحاذوا بين المناكب وسدوا الخلل ولينوا بأيدي إخوانكم ولا تذروا فرجات للشيطان ومن وصل صفا وصله الله ومن قطع صفا قطعه الله. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu arda is saying that the Prophet said that establish your rows and lines, make them perfect, and make sure you are touching your shoulders and fill up the gaps. Fill up the gaps and touching your shoulders. Notice that in all of the instructions of the Prophet he's saying shoulders, chest and shoulders, leave no gaps. And then he says, don't leave any gaps for shaitan, because shaitan will basically come in between, will come in the narrations anyway, inshallah. And then he says, whoever connects a saf and joins the saf and moves together to complete a saf, then Allah will join, or Allah will be together with him. Whoever connects a saf, Allah will connect with that person. Whoever cuts a saf, Allah will cut from that person. This is also in the hadith. This hadith is telling us that it's wajib to do taswiyat al-sufuf. To make the rows straight and neat is wajib, unless of course exceptional circumstances. And this is also showing us a very clear warning for those who don't connect safs and be lazy and want to have extra room for no reason. So this is also in that hadith. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال رصوا صفوفكم وقاربوا بينها وحاذوا بالأعناق فوالذي نفسي بيدي إني لأرى الشيطان يدخل من خلل الصف كأنها الحذف. This hadith is saying that Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik has said that the Prophet ﷺ has said that make your rows really tight together. Don't leave any gaps whatsoever. And make them very close together as well. And then join between your necks. You come very close as if and your shoulders are touching. Your necks are close as well. فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ. Of course, now we say, وَحَاذُوا بِالْأَعْنَاقِ. Join your necks. We know that it doesn't mean join your necks. Because we can't join our necks. It's not possible. Our necks, some people, it's not possible. You'll choke. So it's talking about joining the safs very tightly, such that your shoulders are touching and your necks are close to each other. فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ. Because I take oath by the one in whose hands is my soul. إِنِّي لَأَرَى الشَّيْطَانِ. Indeed, I see shaitan is يَدْخُلُ مِنْ خَلَلِ الصَّفِ. Is trying to come in the gaps of any gaps. If you leave gaps, shaitan is trying to wind between them and trying to basically capture them as if it's a stray sheep. Okay, al-hadaf is a غنم سود صغار تكون باليمن. It's like a hadaf is like a small sort of stray sheep that's found usually in Yemen. By saying that the idea is if you leave gaps, shaitan will try to come in and distract you and basically take control over you and so on, like a stray sheep. Idea is that we should, and the instruction is that we should leave no gaps whatsoever in our salawat. By the way, this applies for sisters too. Sisters also should leave no gaps in their sufuf when they pray. وعنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أتم الصف المقدم ثم الذي يليه فما كان من نقص فليكن من الصف في الصف المؤخر. He said again, complete. Can you imagine how many hadith there are in this regard? What does that mean? It means that it's that important. It means the Prophet was saying it again and again. Many narrators, many narrations, many styles of narration, many wordings of narration, meaning the Prophet ﷺ was on a campaign to straighten people's sufuf. That's why there's so many narrations. The Sahaba heard at different times in different ways. So, atimmu saf, perfect your saf, your row. Al-Muqaddam, the first one, ثُمَّ الَّذِي, and then the one after, Complete it, the first and the second like that. And if there's going to be any saf that is short, then let it be the one that is last. We've reached up to hadith number, and then you also, hadith number 1094, inshallah we'll finish 1100 today. وعن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على ميامين الصفوف. Aisha radiallahu anha wa ardaha is saying that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has said, indeed Allah and his angels send peace and make dua, the malaika make dua, and Allah sends peace to the right hand side of the sufuf, because that is the preferred. And of course there is also dua according to other hadith for even the left side, but the right side is preferred. So the Sahaba used to want to be on the right side for this hadith, as well as to be the first people to be seen by the Prophet when he gives salam. SubhanAllah, can you imagine the level of respect and love, and they'd want to be in the best of books of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so on. وعن البراء رضي الله عنه قال كنا إذا صلينا خلف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أحببنا أن نكون عن يمينه يقبل علينا بوجهه فسمعته يقول. So Al-Bara ibn Azib, one of the young Sahabi, he's saying we used to whenever we pray with the Prophet ﷺ, we used to want to be on the right hand side somehow go to the saf, first saf, or as early as possible, as forward as possible, and to the right hand side, so that when he gives salam he can see us with his face. Also when he turns around, he will be turning towards that side, and he will be the first bunch of people to be seen. And so they would receive that, that glance of happiness from the Prophet ﷺ. And then he says, while I was doing this, I heard him reciting one day in his salah, رَبِّ قِنِي عَذَابَكَ يَوْمَ تَبْعَثُ أَوْ تَجْمَعُ عِبَادَكَ. This is one of the du'as you can make in ruku' or in sujood. That, oh Allah, save me from your punishment on the day that you resurrect your servants. So we learn a few things here. One of them, of course, is the preference of the right side. Secondly, also, in order to teach your children or teach people, you are allowed to read some du'as a bit loudly so that they hear it from you. So if you're a dad, if if you're a teacher and you're leading your students, etc., then to make your voice slightly raised so that they can hear you what you're reciting in dua or reciting in salah is jaiz and is acceptable. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وسط الإمام وسد الخلل. Make the imam in the middle and fill up the gaps. So that means the row starts from the middle behind the imam and then it goes towards the right and then towards the left. That's khalas. That's the end of that chapter. Next chapter, 195. باب فضل السنن الراتبة مع الفرائض وبيان أقلها وأكملها وما بينهما. The chapter of the virtues of the sunan al-ratiba, the sunan that are attached to the fard salahs. There are of course sunan of different types. The tahiyyatul masjid is also a sunnah. Tahiyyatul wudu is also a sunnah. There are sunan of course of haram and etc. But these sunan we're talking about are the sunan that are attached to the fard salahs. So the first hadith in the chapter is 1097. عن أم المؤمنين أم حبيبة رملة بنت أبي سفيان رضي الله عنهما قالت سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول ما من عبد مسلم يصلي لله تعالى في كل يوم 12 ركعة تطوعا غير الفريضة إلا بنى الله له بيتا في الجنة أو إلا بني له بيت في الجنة. أم المؤمنين أم حبيبة Ramla. Her name is Habiba Ramla bint Abi Sufyan, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. The Prophet ﷺ married the daughter of Abu Sufyan, who then became Muslim himself, radiallahu anhu arda. But at the beginning he was a big enemy of Islam, as you know. So he married Habiba Ramla bint Abi Sufyan, and so Abu Sufyan is his father-in-law as well. Subhanallah. Qalat, she says, she's the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. She said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, there is no Muslim servant that prays in every day of his 12 rak'at of optional prayer, غير الفريضة, except for the faridah. I'm referring to the sunan. There's 12 rak'at of sunnah, and the reward of those 12 rak'at of sunnah, of course, independently you have the reward, but together, praying them, all of them, has a special reward, is that Allah will make for you a house in Jannah. Now, if Allah makes you a house in Jannah, then Allahu Akbar, how can it possibly look? Khadija radiallahu anha wardaha was promised a house in Jannah. All of it is made out of the whole house, whole palace is made out of a hollow pearl. There's no attachments. There's no joint. The whole mansion is made out of a hollow pearl. Can you imagine? And the pearls of Jannah are something completely different. The handkerchief of Jannah, a handkerchief of Jannah is better than everything the dunya contains. And the hur of Jannah, even if there was one drop of their spit was to fall onto the oceans of this world, from being so salty, they would all become sweet. That's one of the hur, because of how luscious, how pure, how clean, how amazing, how gorgeous, how beautiful Jannah is. May Allah grant us all entry into Jannah. Say Ameen. So which are these 12 rak'at? Count with me. 2 at Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr. How many is that? 8. 2 after Maghrib and 2 after Isha. These are all the Sunan Mu'akkada. These are the emphasized Sunnahs. Okay? And Dhuhr is the same Jum'ah is the same basically. So Jum'ah you also have 4 rak'at before, and according to some scholars we have also 4 rak'at after as well. There is ikhtilaf between that because of the asanid and different hadith and so on and so forth. But these are the 12 rak'at of sunnah in every single day. There are other sunnah, for example, the sunnah before Asr, the sunnah before Isha, but these are not the emphasized sunnah. These are non-emphasized sunnah, which means you pray it, you get reward for it, of course, your sins are expiated and cleansed thereby, hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at. But the 12 rak'at are talking about those 12 rak'at that we should try to never miss, inshaAllah. And you'll find in the next chapter the emphasis on praying the 2 rak'at of Fajr, excessive emphasis of the Prophet ﷺ, how he would never leave it to the best of his ability. وعن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال صليت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ركعتين قبل الظهر وركعتين بعدها وركعتين بعد الجمعة وركعتين بعد المغرب وركعتين بعد العشاء متفق عليه. This hadith from Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar is narrating, he's saying that I prayed to the Prophet ﷺ 2 rak'at before Dhuhr and 2 rak'at after Dhuhr, and 2 rak'at after Jum'ah, and 2 rak'at after Maghrib, and 2 rak'at after Isha. So he's giving a slightly different variation of the Sunan. He's saying 2 rak'at before Dhuhr, and that's why the scholars who stand for 2 rak'at say 2 rak'at, like Shafi'is and others. But there is, of course, you'll find from the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, she used to pray, that he used to pray, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 4 rak'at of Sunnah before Zuhr. That's coming as well, inshallah. وعن عبد الله بن مغفل رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بين كل أذانين صلاة بين كل أذانين صلاة بين كل أذانين صلاة قال في الثالثة لمن شاء. Abdullah ibn Mughaffal radiallahu anhu warda, we haven't come across Sahabi before in our discussions, but inshallah cover his biography at some point, perhaps. He says, the Prophet ﷺ said, between every adhan and iqamah, there is some sort of nafal, optional, sunnat, salah. He said it second time. He said it a third time. Between every adhan and iqamah, there is salah. Between every adhan and iqamah, there is salah. And on the third time, he added a condition. He said, for the person who wants to. Because he said that, we know that it's not fard. Otherwise, if you emphasized it like that and didn't say liman sha, then it would seem to be a wajib. And because of this, of course, there's also evidence for the ulama that have said that there is indeed a sunnah before Salatul Maghrib. Of course, in the Hanaf school, we don't consider there to be a sunnah before Salatul Maghrib, but it is there, and that's why in Darul we have a 3-minute gap for you to pray that sunnah, should you want to. And all of the major mosques also do that as well. Okay, should we go into the chapter of the emphasis of the first 2 rak'at of Fajr? The two Sunan of Fajr? Let's do, Bismillah, it's quite short. Chapter number 196. Babu ta'kid rak'atay sunnat subhi. The emphasis of the 2 rak'at of Sunnah in Salatul Fajr, on Subh, of the Subh. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان لا يدع 4 قبل الظهر وركعتين قبل الغداة رواه البخاري. Hadith number 1100, 1100th hadith. Aisha radiallahu anha wardaha says that the Prophet ﷺ would never leave 4 rak'at of sunnah before dhuhr. That's where we get 4 rak'at from. And 2 rak'at of sunnah before al-ghadah, which is the fajr. وعنها قالت لم يكن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على شيء من النوافل أشد تعاهدا منه على ركعتي الفجر. She says that the Prophet ﷺ used to never hold on to anything that is nafal, i.e. not from fara'id. So what's fard is fard, what's wajib is wajib, and what's beyond that is considered to be in the chapter of nafal, but there is of course sunnat mu'akkada in that chapter. So there's a variation of how much emphasized it is. How emphasized it is. She says that the Prophet ﷺ used to hold on to nothing that is nafal more severely, more strongly than the 2 rak'ats of Fajr. And that, of course, the fact that he held on to it so much is emphasis for us, is a reminder for us that it is indeed a sunnah mu'akkada. عنها عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ركعتا الفجر خير من الدنيا وما فيها. She says that also the Prophet ﷺ has said that the 2 rak'at of Fajr are better than everything in the dunya and everything it contains. Rawah Muslim. And then in another narration is أحب إلي من الدنيا جميعا. He said it is more beloved to me than the whole world. I've seen very interesting memes. He says Elon Musk worth 200 billion. Man paid his Fajr. Man paid his 2 rakat of Sunnat of Fajr. Who is the winner? He wins, because obviously he has just won the dunya and everything it contains, whereas the other person has only got some money. وعن عبد الله بن بلال بن رباح رضي الله عنه مؤذن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه أتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليؤذنه بصلاة الغداة فشغلت عائشة بلالا بأمر سألته عنه حتى أصبح جدا فقام بلال فآذنه بالصلاة وتابع أذانه فلم يخرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فلما خرج صلى بالناس فأخبره أن عائشة شغلته بأمر سألته عنه حتى أصبح جدا وأنه أبطأ عليه بالخروج فقال يعني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إني كنت ركعت ركعتي الفجر فقال يا رسول الله إنك أصبحت جدا فقال لو أصبحت أكثر مما أصبحت لركعتهما وأحسنتهما وأجملتهما رواه أبو داود بإسناد حسن. This is a slightly longer narration. Let me pull up the translation of it, inshallah. This hadith is being narrated by a Sahabi that everybody knows. And he is none other than our beloved Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah. Bilal radiallahu anhu wa arda. Who is the mu'adhin of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as you know. He is narrating this hadith and he says the following. Just trying to put up the translation. I went to inform the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam about the time of Fajr. So he went to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and said, but it's Fajr time. Aisha radiallahu anha wa ardaha kept me busy and began to ask me about something until the day grew bright. So she was basically asking him, and then the discussion led to the Salatul Fajr, coming to the near the end of the time. Then I got up and informed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the time of the Salat. I informed him again, but he did not come out immediately to lead the Salat. So he went and told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam it's needed time for Salat, and he basically didn't come out straight away. He was still taking his time. When he came out, he led us in Salat. I said to him, Aisha radiallahu anha, basically Sayyidina Bilal is saying, I said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha warda kept me busy and thus diverted my attention by asking me about something, and the morning grew bright. You also came out, then he said, also, Ya Rasulullah, you also came out a bit late. Upon that, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I was engaged in performing the 2 rak'at of Fajr, Bilal. Meaning he's saying that even though the morning was growing bright, I still didn't want to miss the Fajr, or the Salatul, the Sunnah of the Fajr. O Messenger of Allah, he said, Bilal said, O Messenger of Allah, you delayed the Salat as so long as the morning grew bright. He said, he replied, even if the morning had become brighter than it did, I would have performed 2 rak'at of the prayer in an excellent manner, because of how valuable and how important these 2 rak'at are. So, what do we learn from this hadith? We learn the absolute emphasis on the 2 rak'at of Fajr, and that we should never leave it, and even if we were to miss Fajr, we should still pray the Salatul Sunnah first and then the Fajr. If you go into then fiqh as well, there are some conditions, and that you should try to pray it before, you should definitely pray as soon as you wake up. Of course, you shouldn't pray it when it's during the time of the sunrise itself, and so on and so forth. But the summary and the moral of the chapter of this chapter is that we should give emphasis to the 2 rak'at of Sunnat. 2 rak'at of Sunnat before Fajr. Because of this, in the Hanafi school of law, they say that even if someone has heard the Imam has begun the Salah, then they should still try to pray their Sunnah in a different prayer space, if there is a different prayer space, or away from the Jama'ah, if there is space away from the Jama'ah. That is on the condition that they are absolutely certain that they will be able to catch the Jama'ah before the Imam goes into Tashahhud or before he gives Salam. Because there are other ahadith which say that when the Iqamah has been called, then there is no Salah to be prayed except for the Fard Salah. But the scholars who have said this, the Hanafi scholars who have said this, they've said that in order to balance and match between the two emphasis, on the one side to not pray any salahs when the Iqamah has been done, and on the other side to not miss the Sunnah of Fajr in its due and correct time. They say if someone is able to mix them both, or balance them both, whereby praying the Sunnah and also catching the Jama'ah, then they should do so. They should do so. But of course, ideally, you should pray this Rawatib Sunan, the emphasized Sunan. You can pray them in the masjid, but ideally, the Prophet ﷺ used to always pray them at home. He used to pray them at home. And he's encouraged that we pray them at home. So praying the Sunan at home, whether it be the Sunnah of Fajr or other Sunan, should be done in the house. Thereafter, for the person who's missed the Sunnah of Fajr, are they allowed to pray it immediately after the Imam finishes Salam from the Fajr, for the Fard Salah in Fajr? There's a difference. The Hanafi scholars will say that no, you should wait until the sun has risen, because according to other narrations, again we learn that there is no Salat between the end of Salatul Fajr and until the sun has risen. So to respect those hadith, they say you should pray your Sunnah that you missed after the sun has risen. Other scholars will say it's fine, you can, and there's precedence for it. It was done at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and so you can indeed pray. So I will say in summary, if you feel like you're going to be lazy and not praying the Sunnah afterwards, just pray it in the masjid and then you can go carry on with your day. Because a lot of the time you say, okay, I'll pray the Sunnah later. You missed it, then you say you're going to pray later, then you get busy with your day, then you miss it as well, completely. So that's not a good idea. Inshallah, we'll stop up to here on chapter number 197, and that is hadith number 1004, 1104 in fact. And inshallah, we'll carry on there from next time. Let me see where we stopped in Mustalah. We haven't done Mustalah last week, I completely forgot for some reason. We stopped on the section where we started learning about what is the meaning of a munqata'u sanad hadith. Like, for example, we said that from the conditions of a sahih hadith is that the sanad has to be connected, it's ittisal sanad. So when the hadith chain is disconnected, there are different types. What are they? They are as follows. The first type is mursal, which basically is translated as loose. This is a isnad where there is a cut between a tabi'i and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I.e., when the tabi'i says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said. This terminology is also used in the case where it is known that a Sahabi companion skips the Sahaba from whom he heard hadith and quotes directly from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So basically, when a hadith, the chain being disconnected is of different shapes and different types. A mursal is when basically the person after the Sahabi doesn't mention from which Sahabi he heard it from. In all the narrations we find, for example, this Sahabi said, I heard it from the Prophet ﷺ. Now if someone comes from the Tabi'een, the next generation, and says, I heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, well, we know that the person hasn't heard it from the Prophet ﷺ because they haven't met the Prophet ﷺ, otherwise they would be a Sahabi. So then the fact that they're saying that they heard it from the Prophet ﷺ means they're not mentioning the Sahabi. That means this hadith chain is disconnected. And this type of inqita' and disconnection is called mursal, meaning the Sahabi is missing. The next one is called mu'allaq, and that's translated as hanging. This is an isnad where the muhaddith collecting the hadith misses out his shaykh. So mu'allaq is an isnad. We're not talking about the Sahaba and Tabi'een anymore. We're talking about, for example, Bukhari or Muslim or Abu Dawood or Ibn Majah and others. They are of course collecting hadith, right? They never heard it from the Prophet ﷺ. But they of course heard it from their shaykh. They never read it from a book. Maybe they read it from some sort of manuscript to their shaykh, but they heard it from their shaykh. So what's expected is that when the muhaddith is collecting a hadith, he's saying that I heard from my shaykh, and he mentions the shaykh. The sami'tu, or haddathani, like that, he's taught me or heard it from. So when the muhaddith doesn't mention his shaykh in the sanad, his teacher, this is an isnad where the muhaddith collecting the hadith misses out his immediate teacher. So there's a gap. This terminology is also used when the muhaddith collecting the hadith misses out the whole isnad and quotes directly from the Prophet ﷺ himself. So it's mu'allaq, it's hanging. It's basically disconnected, and it's called hanging because it's hanging in thin air, if you like. There is no connection. So it's either the muhaddith has missed out the whole chain or missed out his shaykh in the chain. There's two more left, inshallah, we'll save that for next lesson. Mursal and mu'allaq. Mursal is when the sahabi misses the tabi'i. Doesn't mention which tabi'i heard it from. And mu'allaq is when the shaykh, the muhaddith, misses his shaykh or misses the whole chain altogether. That's it. Are there any questions today regarding anything we've heard before as well? No problem.
I've got two questions.
Yes, Shaykh, tafadhal.
One of them, if someone praying sunnah in the second row, there's a gap in the first row. Can you go to the first row? And can you pass in front of it?
So someone is praying the sunnah in the
second row. There's a space between two persons.
Yes, you can.
The first row.
You can go in front of it.
It's not a problem. Okay.
It's not a problem.
Other question. For example, in a Fajr prayer.
Yeah.
When you go to the masjid, it is quite late. You have a few minutes for the sunnah prayer. Can you have intention for example, intention for the wuzu and tahiyat masjid and sunnat al-ratiba all together for one prayer?
Can you have all the intentions together in one prayer? This part, I'll say I want to confirm. I'll say I don't know for now. But in terms of praying the sunnah itself, when you pray the sunnah, it suffices for the other sunan that you've missed out. It suffices for the sunan of Tahiyatul Wudu and Tahiyatul Masjid. The sunnah, if you happen to pray it in the masjid of the Fajr, it will be in place of the Tahiyatul Masjid as well. But can you make multiple intentions for multiple sunan? Allahu Alam. I don't want to say anything for now. Inshallah, next week I will verify. Let me just write that down so I don't forget, inshallah. Multiple intentions. Yes, please. Next question.
Can you explain the rule of, I know that in Jummah, when it's Jummah time, you shouldn't divide to brothers. And I don't know, like...
Oh, yeah, saying that you shouldn't jump over people's necks. You shouldn't like make a gap and go. Is that what you're talking about? When you...
I think so. So you can't do that.
As in, you should basically you shouldn't...
Let's say there's some gap.
Yeah.
You want to fill the gap. And
You should basically, this is talking about not overstepping people's like shoulders and necks. It's talking about when the khutbah's going on. When the khutbah's going on, don't mess around. Like as in, don't disturb anybody. Don't mess around. No one mess around. Even if someone is, they shouldn't. So don't disturb people in khutbah. But when you, because during khutbah, it's not a condition that the sufuf are straightened. During khutbah, what's the condition is that you listen attentively. After that, when you straighten the rows, then you're allowed to squeeze through. That's fine. So we're talking about during the khutbah, you're not supposed to step over people's necks.
And how do you perform the sufuf when someone is on a chair, basically?
How do you perform? When you're on a chair, you basically the way it works is, if you are for some reason unable to do a particular part of salah because of an injury, because of a disability, then you skip only that part, and every other part that you can do, you have to do it. So this darura, this necessity, is calculated based on how much is the necessity. If say for example, someone can't do ruku' but is able to stand, then they should stand for the part that they can stand. When it comes to ruku', they can sit down. So as much of the salah as you can do without any help, without any reclining, without any chair, you should do. Where and when you can't, for example, someone can do ruku' and stand, but can't do sujood, they should stand and do ruku'. And when it comes to sujood, they should indicate it by sitting down on the chair, whatever. It doesn't mean that just because you can't do sujood, now you can sit down for the whole salah. So it's based upon how much you need to sit down for, or how much you can't do. That amount you basically indicate it to the best of your ability. Make it the shape of your salah, as close as possible to the original shape of the action of the ibadah, of the sujood. So now if you're, say for example, praying on a plane or a train where you can't move, they don't allow you to stand and pray, then you have to try and get as close as possible. So you can do this, you can do that, you can do ruku', you can do sujood very low. You should do all of that. Yeah. The same would apply for also someone who's perhaps stuck in a hospital bed. They can't move, or paralyzed partially, and so on, or very ill, they can't move. They should even if they can, pray with the indication of their head. Like that. You should also, even that you shouldn't miss your salah. Anything else? Yes.
If you can't break the Jummah congregation, what's the alternative?
If there is enough people to pray Jummah, you should pray Jummah with them. So if there's 3 people and an imam, you should do it. And if you are just alone or less than that, some scholars will say even less than, even if it's 3 people in total. I think there is even one opinion to say 2, but Allahu A'lam. But definitely 3 people if there are, and an imam, you should pray you can, if you wanted to, do your own Jum'ah. But if it's in the masjid, if you are on a journey together, and you can do it by yourself, khalas. But if you come late to the masjid, even if it's a few of you, you shouldn't start your own Jum'ah. You should pray dhuhr. You should pray dhuhr. So if you miss the Jum'ah, and it's actually taking place and you've missed it, then you don't do Jum'ah. You do dhuhr. But if it is that you're a bunch of people out there somewhere, you haven't missed the Jum'ah, because you're by yourselves. If you're at home during the Corona times, for example, if there's 3 of you or whatever, there's enough people to pray Jum'ah, then you can pray Jum'ah there.
You know when you say Jummah, do you mean the khutbah? Do you mean
Yeah, khutbah, everything, yeah. Khutbah, everything, yeah. So Jum'ah entails beginning with khutbah and then leading the salah with the 2 rak'at in loud prayer.
What if you miss the khutbah and you join the salah? Does that still count?
No, that still counts. So even if you catch the last part of tashahhud in that tahiyyatu of the second rak'ah, you still caught the Jum'ah. You just have to obviously fill up the 2, make the 2 rak'at, complete it, and khalas, don't miss it next time, basically. Inshallah. Any other questions? No? طيب, in that case, we'll wrap it up to here, inshallah. Thank you for your participation. May Allah accept from each and every single one of us. And our Thursday class is tomorrow. If you do attend, we'll see you then. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.